Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the NFL 2025 season. I'm your host, Tyler Weeman. I'm going to be breaking down the week one main slate here. Think it's an interesting week. Pricing's pretty soft, as I'm sure you've heard from various places, but we will get into all that and try to lead you in the right direction on your lineups. Before we get into it, come join us at LineStar. We do have a free trial option. If you've never tried us out before, come try us out. Get 7 days free. We also have a great deal, $39.99 per month. Gets you access to all we do, the props, the DFS, the best ball for all the sports we cover, or just jump on the yearly, which is half price. Now, let's dive into this slate. So we're going to cover DraftKings and FanDuel, cover them both to the best of our ability here. And we got no review, last week to talk about, so we can just dive straight in. And I like to start off the shows by a little bit more of a slate overview situation. So we have, like 5 games or so that have high implied totals, that being Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Carolina, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Miami, Indianapolis, and then kind of the Giants, Commanders, and Lions versus Packers. Those are the highest implied total games, but then the ones that project to be the fastest are Arizona and New Orleans. This game should play fast. There should be a lot of plays. How successful their plays are a total different thing. Houston and the Rams, which is a 43.5 total, and then Cleveland and Cincinnati, which is actually the highest total on the slate. Interesting that one is the highest when over the last 3 years, I think they've only had one game over 45 points. So they're obviously expecting a little change there with Flacco and the poor Cincinnati defense. So let's get over to high-owned quarterbacks. And we can break those down. We'll start off there. And the first one, Jayden Daniels. Game totals 45.5. Obviously, Jayden is a tremendous quarterback. He had a great year last year. The one thing that may be going a little untalked about or lower under the radar is the fact this Giants front could be extremely good. Abdul Carter looks like an absolute menace, and that could cause some problems. The other aspect, Terry McLaurin just got into camp. I know the chemistry is there, but is he going to be taking any plays off, anything like that, which could negatively affect Mr. Daniels? All in all, due to his rushing upside, I'm fine playing a little bit of him, but I just don't see this one as a ceiling type outcome. I don't see this as a game where he's going to be putting up 30, 40, points. And we need that for him to be pushing that, 30 fantasy point area. And I just don't see it in this matchup. I'm going to come underweight on Daniels. 16% owned isn't too high. Quarterbacks these days in DFS don't get too crazy of ownership, but it's enough for me to probably go somewhere else. Next, we got Joe Burrow. Now, this Cincinnati defense is going to be absolutely terrible. That does warrant wanting to play some Burrow. However, what can we expect from this Cleveland offense is my issue here. They're not going to be prolific running. They're not going to be prolific passing. Now, it's a very bad defense. So how many points can they get? If they get into the mid-20s and are able to push Burrow, then maybe Burrow can get there. But my guess is they struggle to really get going on the offensive side. That's Cleveland. And Cincinnati is a team that needs to be pushed to really get going. If you look at Burrow's big games, 30 to 24, 34 to 35, 30 or 27 to 34. They're always the higher scoring outlier games of the week. And while this game has the highest over under, I just don't think it's set for an outlier type performance. And thus, I'm probably not going too hard on Joe Burrow in this situation. I think both teams are fine kind of running the ball and taking a little bit of a lead or just trying to stay in the game until late. And with that, I don't think Cincinnati is going to come out being super aggressive versus a solid defense in the Browns. Next, we got Trevor Lawrence, 5,300, coming in, little chalky, but I did like him, as I want to talk about him a little bit extra. Also, I should have liked Burrow for this, but Trevor Lawrence, we all know, new coach. We got Cohen over there. And one of the things he did with Baker Mayfield is he made a short passing game, let the quarterback get in a rhythm and get it going. Now, Carolina's defense is horrible. I think Cohen is going to come out and wanting to show off his offense a little bit. I think versus a poor defense and an offense in Carolina that could actually score some points here, there's a little more shootout potential in this game than the Cleveland and Cincinnati game. Thus, I like it, as a total game stack. And we're looking at quarterbacks. Most of the time, we're looking at more of a game stack situation. So not only do we get the quarterback, but we get pass catchers with it. And we're getting, 3-4 pieces right in a lineup instead of just one. I think, like Juan said, he loves this game. I think this game is going to be a very popular one, but there's a lot of reasons to feel good about it, and it's definitely one I'm going to have interest in. Carolina ranked 28th, allowing 2 passing touchdowns per game over the last 9. They allow more fantasy points to quarterbacks in a way. Non-division, you good. There's so many pluses to the matchup. I don't need to go into depth too much on the matchup itself, but I do expect Trevor Lawrence to take a step up. He has shown ability to score fantasy points, and this year is really a make it or break it year. I like him. I think 5,300 is too cheap in this matchup, in this new offense and all that. Baker Mayfield. This is one of my favorite games of the week. However, there's one aspect of it that I'm a little worried about, and I want to talk through it with you. One, Tristan Wirfs is going to be out. Godwin's going to be out, which is fine. They have Ibuka. They have enough weapons, but Wirfs is my worry here. They may have to lean on the run game a little bit more just to slow down a pass rush without Wirfs, and without such a good offensive lineman, it could make the game go a little bit slower. The other side is with the Falcons. I worry about the Falcons really wanting to put in the game, Penix, the game in his hands right away. I think most likely they're going to come out being conservative. And the only way this game gets going, quickly is if Tampa punches Atlanta in the mouth right away. And then Atlanta is on their heels passing all game long. So I do like game stacks in this, but I kind of prefer the Atlanta stacks over the Tampa Bay ones. However, both can absolutely hit. And I love Mike Evans in this game in Baker stacks, but I like the other side with Penix just as much. And it's been a great matchup all season long. Over the last 4 we don't need to go into last year's stats for Mayfield and for the matchup. It was a great matchup last year, probably a good matchup once again this year, and Baker just continues to level up. So definitely like it. My favorite game, why was everyone out on Baker in best ball? I don't get it. I think that reason was just where his price was. he is a very good quarterback. He's really got it done the last couple of years, but there are some changes going on with the team, a little more uncertainty. I did think his price was a little higher than it should be, but he does have that ceiling potential, which we want in DFS as well as best ball. So it's not like he was a bad pick. And let's get into some more here. All right, we're going full pivot time. On DraftKings, we got to shout out Joe Flacco at 4,900. I don't know how much Joe Flacco I'm going to go, but 4,900 is super cheap versus that bad of an offense. So I think it makes some sense to, if you're going to play Flacco, to have a bring back of a Cincinnati guy, because the way this game really gets going is Flacco just has to continually air it out, and that's because Cincinnati has a lead. Yes, Ben, I agree. Flacco is probably going to have to throw a lot, but with how bad that Cincinnati defense is, they could also run. They could rush the ball a ton. All right, now pivot-wise, Tua. This is one of my favorite games of the week, 47.5 total, close game spread-wise. The other aspect is we have no Darren Waller. Without Darren Waller, that target tree just gets smaller and smaller. You really have 4 guys here that Tua can pass to. And on the other side, you have Jonathan Taylor, who's an explosive player. Not a ton of deep threat worries from the Colts, but Jonathan Taylor can break a 90-yarder, and that just dramatically speeds up the game. The other aspect here that I think maybe going overlooked a little bit is these are 2 offenses that are trying to show they have made the right steps going forward. Miami looked like an absolute total mess last year, and with that, I think they're going to come out going, hey, we can right this ship. We can get it going. I know vibes kind of seemed off all preseason with them, but they can right that ship quick. And when the lights come on week 1, especially versus a defense that's meh in the Colts. And then on the Colts side, you have Daniel Jones taking the helm, which is actually an upgrade at quarterback, which is crazy to say just because it's going off a 50% completion percentage situation up to 60, 65. And that can continually move this offense forward and make some scoring. So I do like it. Eddie Perez asked Taylor or Achane. I like Achane personally. Taylor's in a great spot. Achane saying he's 100% healthy. It's a calf, so you never truly know, but it was, 3 weeks ago or so now that he got hurt. So I do like Achane, but I love the ceiling possibility with Taylor as well. So Tua, small target tree, easy stack situation, and then you have a slew of guys that nobody really wants to play. People want to play Hill, but they're worried about him. Waddle came off a down season. Then you have Achane with his calf injury. But you like all 3 of them, and then you also have a super cheap Malik Washington that is interesting. So I like Tua from that standpoint in a good matchup versus the Colts. I don't like the Daniel Jones side of it as much, just due to the fact that he has to get a rushing touchdown, I think, to be optimal. And there's just so many different ways to go about it. Can he get the rushing touchdown, though? Absolutely. I don't mind some. I'm just not going to go hard on him. And then Michael Penix Jr., we talked about him in this game already, so I don't need to go too far into it, but he did put up 29 versus Carolina in week 18. Think he's a very good quarterback. It's just a wait and see. He's cheap at 5,600, and he has solid weapons. So don't mind going with Penix a little bit. And then I got to throw in CJ Stroud here. Look, no Joe Mixon. It's Nick Chubb, behind at running back. I think they're gonna have to throw to move this offense. It's also profiles as one of the quicker games of the week, which just adds fantasy points. And both offenses can get it done and really push the scoring. So I do think it's a little interesting. Also, without Christian Kirk, it's another spot. Targets tree is just smaller, so it's a nice. Yes, I agree. Ben. I'm not a fan of him at this point. Could it be worth stacking Taylor and Achane together? I think so, because both of them are home run hitters. I don't love usually going two running backs from the same game, but both of them have explosiveness behind them and can score from anywhere. So I think it is very interesting. Ben also saying Malik Washington legacy game, and I was high on him all off season and am there now again. I do need to kind of probably throw out the warning to everybody that's been in the best ball streets all year. We got to switch our brain over. The old dusty guys that you may have been staying away from in best ball are plays this week. You can't overlook the fact that they have fresh legs and all of that stuff coming into this week. All right. So clicking over to FanDuel real quick. High owns are here. Jaden, Burrow, Lawrence, very similar. Baker's there as well. And we can talk about all the same pivots here as we did over there. So I don't want to go too far into that. One thing I will say is the pricing discrepancy for quarterbacks is much smaller on FanDuel. Whereas, on DraftKings, you have 4,900 Joe Burrow at 66 over here. Like, I'm probably not getting to 6,600 Burrow. So, Eddie loves the old Dusties. Hey, to each their own. I agree they are solid ADP, but you worry a little more about them wearing down to the end of the season versus picking their production up. But the old dusty guys, you need a little bit of them on almost all your teams. All right, so let's get over to running backs back on DraftKings here. Our high owned, we got Chase Brown, James Conner, CMC. CMC totally up in the air right now. I'm sure you guys have all seen what's going on with CMC. He now has a questionable tag. He didn't practice today. He says he's fine, but also there's, a quote with him talking about he always plans to play. And, but with his injury history, you just don't know. So who knows what happens with CMC? If he is playing and sounds like a full go, he's in a great spot. James Conner, old dusty guy versus minus 6.5 point favorites, 43.5 game total, one of the faster games of the week. I agree, Ben. CMC under on total. That's where I was. But hey, if he's 100%, he could break the slate week one. But I think there's even more so of a question mark about that. All right, so back to James Conner. We know what he is. He's a very solid running back. He's going to get it. He should do well in this spot. One of the faster games of the week. Cardinals should control the game. It's in a dome. There's a lot of reasons to like Conner. We have a 5-star alert score on him. Saints allow 1.1 rushing touchdowns per game, over 108 rushing yards per game over the last 9. Connor's averaged 22 fantasy points in favored games. There's so many different reasons to go with Conner. I'm fine going there. 6,100 is a decent price. I don't think we need to get too cute on this. I think a lot of people are going to end up just playing some of the new fancy toys over the old dusties. And hey, I'm fine with some James Conner. He's coming in high owned, but that's good. Chase Brown, he's cheap. He has a huge ceiling. He ended the season super strong. By all accounts, his workload should be, very high this season. They do have Samaje Perine. Could take some third down work, though. All in all, I'm fine if you want to roll out some Chase Brown. I don't love this spot, but I am one that I don't love this game. I know some others think totally different, but I think this Cleveland Browns defense is solid. And I think the most likely outcome in this game is like a 24-17 or 21-14 type game. And it just doesn't do that much for you. Chase Brown can have a solid game. I'm fine playing some if he pops up in my lineups, but I'm not going to go 30%, which is showing up right now as his ownership. Alvin Kamara, another old dusty, and this could be check down city for him. Fresh legs. I'm fine playing some of him in this matchup versus Arizona. Once again, one of the faster games of the week, and he just has such a solid floor. And if he's able to break a run, the ceiling is obviously there as well, as he had 47 in week 2 last year, 22 in week 1. He had 31 in week 9. Like, those ceiling games are still absolutely there from time to time. I do prefer Connor, but I don't mind some Kamara. Bucky Irving versus the Falcons. I like me some Bucky. I don't mind going there. I was happy to see that Cade Otton is off of the injury report. I think that will help the line, because I think Cade could be blocking a little bit more without Wirfs. I'm fine playing some Bucky. I absolutely like him in this spot. Now let's get into some pivots. Chuba. I've said that I like the game. I think Chuba is one of those plays that I like on the Carolina Panthers side. There were several games last year where he had a real workhorse type role. 5 targets. A lot has been made about how the guy isn't involved in the passing game, but he had a ton of games of 5+ targets. He is involved. I do prefer I know they do have Rico now, so maybe that is going to take some passing work, but I do like Chuba. I think he's in a good spot. Jacksonville was all awful versus the rush last year. They may have got a little bit better with on the defense side, especially with the offense improving. But I think Chuba is a very, very good shot for a touchdown, and I like him for it. Are y'all ETN or Bigsby? I gotta go with the Bigsby side personally. I think the touchdown aspect is there for him. ETN is going to be boom bust based on hitting a home run. I think that's how Cohen's been talking about him all year, and with that, I think he's just going to be very boom bust and very hard to rely on. All right, 5,900, Kenneth Walker. Hard to know 100% what his health is, but this guy is extremely good, and if he is healthy in this new running scheme with this big playability at 5,900, I really like it. It is surprising to see him being cheaper than Chuba Hubbard. The upside is real. He's, not in the best spot ever versus the 49ers, but he's done it before off them. 21 versus them in week 6 and 14 versus them in week 11, had touchdowns both games. The man is one of the few guys that could get, 2-3 touchdowns in a game easily. And I think 5,900 going to low owned is just too cheap. Achane at 6,900 versus the Colts, one of my favorite games, one of my favorite stacking partners with Tua. obviously like this one, and I absolutely love the spot of for Achane. He might end up being one of my highest owned, if not the highest running back I have. JT, same thing. We talked about him. He can hit a home run from everywhere. Coming in too low owned. I do think his ownership goes up significantly throughout the weekend, but he's averaging more in domes. He's at home, can hit a home run from anywhere. And on the other side, there's explosive players. So there's a ton to like. And then without Anthony Richardson, the opportunity for him to get targets and all that is just much higher. I think without AR, his floor is higher and the ceiling is just as high as it was with him. Jahmyr Gibbs, 7,700 versus the Packers. Now, this one is hard. Without Kenny Clark, I think this Green Bay Packers rush D is going to be much worse than it was. The other aspect is, what is his workload like? Is it you can't put the cat in the bag? He just absolutely crushed the end of last season. We got to give this guy 60%, 70% of the work. Or is it still David Montgomery has a role? They're kind of splitting 55-45 situation. If Gibbs gets all the work with his explosiveness and a Green Bay rush D that just got a little bit worse, I'm very interested in him at 7,700, and also end of the slate kind of player that could really crush and bring you up the boards. And then I threw out Tank there at 4,600. Love the spot. I think there's touchdown upside. He's cheap. One thing I have to say, though, is we don't really need to go to these super cheap guys this week. We can play, more balanced, more middle ground, and have huge upside, which isn't always the case. Usually, further on in the NFL season, we're like scratching to find 4K guys that have a ceiling. And we just don't really need to do that this week. So that's my only aspect that I don't like of him. Also, nobody's been talking about Austin Eckler whatsoever. He's going to have a role in this. We have no idea what Bill's role is going to be. And I think Bill is probably the biggest wild card on this entire slate. If you guys are not aware, that's Corey Krosky-Merritt, who had an excellent preseason. But, it could just be Eckler, the one that ends up eating, and he's only 4,800 and nobody wants to go there. And if the Giants front is really that good, it could be dump offs to Eckler, them just getting him in space, screen games, whatnot, to slow down that rush of the Giants. So I don't hate going the Eckler side. Another spot, Old Dusty. The guy can put up 20 at 4,800. I don't totally hate that play. High owned on FanDuel, we got Henderson is only 4,700 over here, so he's going high owned. He's getting that big juice. He's another one. These rookies you got to be careful with. Everybody wants to play him. It's the whole off-season best ball mentality. You drafted these guys all year. Now you want to see him flourish, but we really don't know his workload. Stevenson's definitely ahead of him. He's going to have a role. It's just, can he hit a home run with, say, 10, 12 touches? Because that's probably what he gets. Chase, Genty, JT, all coming up, and CMC, all coming up high owned here. Now, let's get over to wide receivers on DK. Pearsall, Chase, Marvin Harrison, and Mike Evans with Ibuka as all high owned. I prefer Evans over Ibuka. We know what he is. We know he's healthy. And dude is an absolute stud with one of the highest ceilings in DFS for a wide receiver outside of, the top 5 guys. I think he's in a great spot. And with pricing so cheap, it's easy to get him. I don't mind throwing Marvin Harrison in some Kyler stacks with McBride. they could just roll the Saints. And the only issue, you have very few bring back options. But if the Saints are able to keep up a little bit, it becomes very interesting. Kellen Moore is a solid offensive coordinator. Chase, my thing with Chase is the games that he breaks slates. Bengals are putting up 30 plus, and I just don't think that profiles as this game. If you want to play Chase, by all means, I would never talk you out of it. He's too good of a player, too consistent. But if you're looking for these 30, 40, 50-point games, you're going to need him to put up 30, or the Bengals to put up 30, and it's just not very likely there. All right. Pearsall, 4,500. Huge upside. He came on the end of last season. Dude got shot in the chest and just shook it off and came back and had an okay end of the season as a rookie. Now he's stepping into a spot where Juwan Jennings is barely practiced. CMC is questionable. Debo's gone. At 4,500, he is absolutely worth throwing some darts at. Seattle was not a great D at the end of the last year. Now, I do think they're going to be much improved, but Pearsall is absolutely fine to throw in there. There's big upside. I mean, he put up 32 versus Detroit and 19 in the last two games. I think Pearsall is a fine play. Let's get into the pivots. Drake London, 6,500. It's a game we like. He's going to get peppered of targets. Darnell Mooney is questionable, hasn't practiced for weeks. He's going to be a game time decision. And the other aspect is they do have some O-line issues, which could make Warner play and not Pitts. If they need the extra blocking, it's going to be Warner, which just takes another weapon off the field. So Drake London could get targeted on just an insane amount. He went nuts off against them last year. That was the game that went 36-30. He had 12 receptions for 154 and a tutty. Could absolutely happen again. Now, the other game, he only went 4 for 34, but that game also was 31-26. Two games that were very, very high scoring. Tet, 5,200. It's a game we like. It's a guy that Dave Canales loves and has talked about wanting to pepper him with targets. He's a rookie, so in his very first NFL game. So very hard to know if there's a real ceiling here. He's going to have some learning to do. I like him as a player. Think he's going to go higher owned than he should, but I'm absolutely interested. Now he is 5,200. Ibuka is 4,600, and I think a lot more people will click Emeka over him. So it could keep the ownership down a little bit. BTJ is one of my favorite wide receiver plays on the slate. Y'all know I love this game. He is amazing. He crushed last year, and I think that Cohen is just going to get him open in space, allow him to do his thing and make stuff happen. I like BTJ quite a bit. Malik Neighbors, if you want Daniels, the way this game goes nuts is a big play. Wilson actually does have a very nice deep ball, and Neighbors hits on one. This game opens up. You can definitely have a Daniel stack with Neighbors bring back that makes some sense. Definitely going to be playing some Neighbors. I also don't have much respect for that Washington Commanders D. However, it looked much, much better at the end of last year. Jaden Waddle, Tyreek Hill, both of these really need to be talked about together. Simply put, in the passing game, it's Achane, Waddle, Hill, Malik, and that's all. If they get in a spot where they're throwing the ball 40 times, that is a ton of targets for these guys. And I think there's real ceiling potential here. I have thought about having, one Miami player in like every lineup this week. I think the ceiling chances for these Miami Dolphins is extremely high. With Hill and Waddle, you got to consider them. People think Hill is dusted. Old Dusty, we talked about that already, but hey, he still had 2 games of 29 plus, can still put up the mid 20s with a lost season. So is he absolutely dusted? I don't know. He is a full go. He doesn't have an injury designation. I'm definitely a bit intrigued by Tyreek as well. I think Devontae Adams is going to go majorly overlooked. I also don't mind Puka, obviously. But if you're going to play Houston, Adams at 6,100 is a very interesting bring back. Adams is going to go overlooked, and Stafford continually has made wide receivers something. So I don't mind trying to be a little early to that one. Nico, this ownership has to come up on him. The fact that they lost Christian Kirk, and then they have 2 rookies and Noel and Higgins. It's going to be Xavier Hutchinson next to him. Nico is going to get peppered with targets, and Houston is going to have to figure out how to get him the ball. They don't have a running game. There's big time ceiling here. If you're playing Flacco, 4,400, Cedric Tillman is a very interesting play. Or if you want to play the Bengals, Tillman showed up last year once he got the start. Can definitely continue with Flacco. And another dusty play, 4,300 Dobbs. I talked about this in the prop show. Look, the Green Bay wide receiver situation is a little interesting right now. Matthew Golden, rookie. Dobbs is going to play a ton. Jaden Reed is questionable with his foot issue. I mean, he broke his foot. He is not going to be able to cut as well or as efficiently as he usually is. Also could be taking a little more plays off. I think Dobbs is going to run a ton of routes and have the opportunity to win versus a defense that was getting crushed through the air at the end of the year last year. Now, the defense should be healthy again and looking a bit different, but I think there's some pass to Dobbs. Now, with Hill and Tillman and Dobbs, you got to throw out that, the fact we don't really need to go to the super cheap guys this week, but it is absolutely an option. There are several guys that look interesting. Debo is another guy that I would absolutely be playing if I play Jaden. Juwan Jennings, 4,900. I mean, this 49er offense continually does well, and you have Jennings and Pearsall at 4,500 and 4,900. You got to consider both of these guys. Jennings is the lower owned one, so at only a little bit more, I would probably prefer going to him over Pearsall. Both are fine. And then we got to talk about the Colts wide receivers. I'm more of a Josh Downs guy. I think he is a better player than Pittman. Pittman does carry a little more chance of touchdown, just being a bigger body guy. But I think Downs is better with getting separation, getting targets, and Daniel Jones is way better of a matchup for these two guys than Anthony Richardson was. So I think at their cheap prices, you need to consider. And then we talked about the Dolphins, 3,200. Malik's going to get targets, and he's almost bare minimum. Wide receiver high owned on FanDuel. We got Nico, London, Puka, BTJ, Evans, Ibuka. We talked about them all. Ton of guys that we like there. All of them I am willing to play. There's no real solid fade there. Kind of wild seeing Chase be a little lower here, but it's just he's so much more expensive. 9.2K versus Puka's 8. So, and Amon-Ra's 8.4. It's just because he's so priced up, not as many people are going. Let's get over to tight end before we can round this out. So Njoku and Sanders, the two high owned here. Njoku looks extremely interesting. Flacco has peppered him with targets before. He's going to get a lot of play here, and it's a terrible Cincinnati defense. Makes a ton of sense. He averaged 42 yards per game over the last 4, and that's with bad quarterback play. He got an upgrade there, and Cincinnati couldn't stop anybody as a tight end. Jatavian, Ton has been made about Jatavian Sanders over this offseason. The one thing that scares me is Tommy Tremble is off the injury report. He had a back injury earlier this season. He's back. Not sure how much he's going to eat into Sanders, but it's a game we like. I don't mind if you want to go with a Bryce Young stack. I personally don't love it, but at 2,900, there's absolutely upside. He can get you 40, 50 plus yards and a touchdown, and at that price, you got to love it. Pivots. George Kittle. I'm going to play a ton of Kittle versus Seattle. The fact is, you have a spot where Juwan Jennings just came back to practice. There's no Ayuk. It's Pearsall and Kittle, and you can't stop Kittle. He also has had huge games versus Seattle in the past. 2 touchdowns last year. 2023 had a touchdown, had a 43-point game versus him years ago. I think there's a ton of reasons to have Kittle. If you're playing that Arizona stack, obviously McBride has to be in play. And then I need to throw out Theo Johnson. Now, I've said that I don't really like this game, but I keep coming back to it. And that, should say something in itself. Theo is an athletic freak. He was coming on at the end of last season before he got hurt. And he's going to get play. And Wilson is a step up quarterback-wise for him. He was able to get, 14. He had 3 double-digit games. He's now in his second season. Washington wasn't great versus tight ends. 31st, allowing 0.4 a game to tight ends. I like the spot. High owned on FD. Kittle. Oh, sorry. Njoku, Bowers, Kittle after that. Kittle's my favorite. Bowers I like. Njoku is fine. Just at 5,700, I'd rather just pay up for 6,500 Kittle. And let's close it all out with defense. Broncos, Jets, Steelers, high-owned Ds. My pivots. Ugly Cardinals. They're 3,500. They're priced too high, but I have real doubts about this Saints offense, and I don't mind throwing some Cardinals out there. And then Seahawks, we have already talked about how the disarray the 49ers have been from an offensive standpoint. Now you're going into Seattle with an improved defense. I think there's pass at a cheap price that they, exceed their salary and can definitely, do pretty well, especially if, say, CMC's out, Jennings isn't a full go. It starts to get a little ugly and lack of playmakers over there quick. So that'll do it for us today. We went 43 minutes. Thank you guys all for joining us. I am excited for week 1. Also excited about another NFL game here in 10 minutes. You all have a good one. I'll let you guys get to the game, and we'll be back with more next week. Talk to y'all later. Peace. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all that. Come join us at LineStar, $39.99 per month.